First of all, on behalf of Wawasan Open University, WOU, and in particular JAWS, Georgetown Institute for Open and Advanced Studies, initiated, headed by Tan Sri Andrew Shen. Where is he? Okay, he is coming in because we were having lunch together. All right. Yeah. All right, here he is. Yes. All right. Now, actually, he already marked his place with his backpack. Okay. Now, today's session, this afternoon session, is going to be on the role of universities. All right. And we are going to pose some very important questions that after the pandemic, a lot of things have changed. And has university changed and world university changed? So these are the issues that we have to address. And but before I introduce the main speaker, who is the author, editor, together with the joint editor, I will say just a few words, all right, about JAWS. As you all know, I don't have to introduce a bit more about JAWS. And this is our first public forum in person or physical version after the pandemic. Yeah. And so what better topic to talk about the role of the universities and including the role of think tanks like JAWS. Now, since the pandemic, a lot of things have changed. The economy, the society have gone online. There's a lot of interactions online, but perhaps less so, person to person. We don't know, right? But businesses and life are undergoing tremendous digital transformation, all right? Now, how should university then position itself in this? Now, before I proceed, let me share with you a personal reflection. Just over 50 years ago, when I started my graduate studies at the Comparative Education Center at the University of Chicago, I learned about how to classify things that people learn, either formally through the schools or universities, or non-formally through the family, the economy, and the society. And at that time, it was very simple. There's three categories. One, knowledge, right? Imparting and learning knowledge and applying knowledge. Second category, skills. Knowledge is different from skills. Skills, you have to handle, or you have to, it can be communication skill, it could be whatever, right? It's not just knowledge. And finally, attitude, values. So it's the so-called KSA, which we have been using for many years since then, and refining and upgrading, etc. So now, another coincidence 50 years ago saw the advent of the electronics industry, when companies like Intel, and AMD move offshore, and guess to where? To Penang. It was in 1972 that they started the operations in Penang, and that's why last year there's the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of Penang's industrialization, but more correctly is export-oriented industrialization, because before that we had import substitution industrialization. Right? So that was 50 years ago. But in the course of the 50 years, there has been a lot of changes driven by the semiconductor industry. The so-called Moore's Law, right? And beyond, now it's beyond Moore, right? And how, the advances in technology have actually changed our lives, economically, socially, even politically. And so these two major events, or two major items in my mind, posed to me a question that with the convergence of 50 years of knowledge about pedagogy, about teaching, learning, right, which is also being disrupted by digital transformation, and the 50 years of electronics industry, which is unprecedented in human history, that in 50 years we have made so much advancement and so much changes has occurred. All right. So the question is, where are we now? And I'm sure most of you are aware that exactly a week ago, this I'm talking about for laymen like me, yeah, an article in the Financial Times talk about the chatbot, okay, the chat GTP, generative pre-trained transformer. Yeah, this is the AI with the ability to write essays and to be able to come up with all kinds of things, whatever you want, all right? And then it has become a real concern for education institutions. But I want to say that this is also nothing new, because when I was studying, there was a company called Thesis Unlimited, okay, where you can actually pay and somebody will write a thesis for you, but not by AI, okay, by some individual somewhere. And I'm sure he will do a lot of work, but not as efficiently as AI, right? Well, this is unlimited. I remember that, we should look at it, unlimited. So the question is, how are we going to handle now with AI keep improving and increasing its power? And are we sure that we are going to be in control, right? But that same article actually ended with a response, because the writer actually asked Chat GPT, what is the future? Are you going to threaten the universities? And Chat GTP replied, and I have to quote, it claimed that it is unlikely to kill the MBA program. Okay? Rafiq, welcome. Okay. So it ended with the assurance that it was unlikely to kill the MBA program, because this is an experiment by the University of Philadelphia's Wharton School, one of the top in the world, where AI was asked to take examination in a course. And you see, oh yes, it has got a lot of prominent graduates, okay, including some from Malaysia. Okay, now the AI actually scored a B minus. That means above average for Wharton students who are already the top, right? Very selective school. So the AI gives us this answer. Quote, while AI and machine learning can automate certain tasks and make them more efficient, they do not yet have the ability to fully replicate the complex decision-making and critical thinking skills that are developed through MBA programs. Okay, then it added, additionally, MBA programs provide networking opportunities and access to industry professionals that cannot be replicated by technology. Now, do you find this response comforting? So let us find out more from the experts who are gathered here today. Okay, so let's start with the editor of the book, and I want to introduce him briefly because my memory is not so good. I have to write down notes. Okay. A physicist by training, Yan first worked in the nuclear industry and with the Dutch embassy. Then he got involved in developing cooperative industry university research programs and founded a private firm dedicated to mobilizing innovative capabilities of companies, consortia, and regions. With such unique experiences, together with several other prominent people, some of whom were Nobel laureates, he initiated Institute Para Limes, correct? Then I think I'll let him explain what Para Limes. It actually means, without, beyond boundaries, above boundaries, beyond boundaries. But why Para, why Limes? Okay, he will explain. I think he'll let you explain much better. I ask, right? It's for the exploration of ideas and the implementation of initiatives not to be limited by discipline, methodology, institution, or generation. Now, this is also not something very new because we have been talking about multidisciplinary studies and all that, and my comparative education center was such because we use economics, sociology, philosophy, blah, 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 to study education and society, education and economy, right? But this is different in the sense that you are going beyond and you are aided by digital transformation with a lot of information and also probably aided by AI. So AI will not replace an editor, I hope. Then he became the director in 2011 of the complexity program of the NTU, Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And since 4 years ago, he has been back in your home country of Netherlands and restarted Para Limes in Europe. By the way, he is a member of GIOAS International Advisory Council. So after the launch, we'll invite 4 panelists to talk about this topic and then to be concluded by a special guest. Okay, I will introduce them later on. So to you, Jan.
What can I add after such a wonderful introduction, actually? I'm not going to talk about the digital transformation of universities. I'm going to talk about the book that was, that's the book that asked the question whether universities nowadays and as we look to the future are fit for the purpose that they were established for. Jonathan will talk a little bit about the digital part of it because he knows about it. I know very little about digital transformation, and in a way, I'm happy that I don't know too much about it. And I don't actually believe that the big transformation that we're in is only part of the digital transformation. I think there's a lot more going on. Anyway, I'm not a gifted speaker, so I make notes that I read from. It's in the last half of the previous century, and even more so in the past 20 years of this century, that the world seems to have changed into a mode of accelerating change. That change has many drivers, like the growth of the world population, the increasing speed of the development of new technologies, the intensifying global connectivity, the unexpected consequences of collective human consumption and behavior, and not to mention the synergies between those drivers. The impact of those changes manifests itself in threats to human societies like climate change, a growing mass of microplastics in the ocean, pandemics, resource scarcity, inequality, and a variety of other problems that play out on a local, regional, and global level. Because the dynamics of these changes generate uncertainties, the connection between science, university, and society is losing the stable context within which it evolved in the last few hundred years. That context enabled the system of reduced reality to take hold of the Western world, and through Western domination, to infest a large part of the non-Western world with it. Reductionism was instrumental in this. It triggered the growth of mostly disciplinary scientific knowledge and a subsequent explosion of technological developments that, in the last century, has largely obfuscated the complex nature of the world, the non-disciplinary nature of its problems, and the many different cultures that evolved in it. But the accelerating changes also laid bare the inherent tension between that reduced reality and the world that is characterized by the complexity of its systems. Among other things, the difference between the knowledge produced and taught in universities and the knowledge needed in a continuously evolving society has come to haunt us. Universities are part of society. Society as a whole evolves in unpredictable ways. If universities are to sustain themselves in their society, they must be able to exploit its local conditions sufficiently to survive and be able to explore the boundaries of their existence to cope with changing conditions. How to do this? How to recognize and understanding the changing conditions, how to carve out a path to the future that will make it possible to adapt these conditions and exploit them in a sustainable way. What is the nature and the direction of changes that universities have to make in their relationship with society? What does that mean for education? What kind of education, how and for who? And what does it mean for society, for science, and for the dynamics of their relationships with research institutes, industry, and others? What moral positions can or should universities claim? What, in other words, are conceivable futures for universities? What can those futures be, given the loads that universities carry with them from their different cultures and pasts? How should the connection and interaction between science, society, and a university develop? What structures will serve those connections best? What educational systems will develop? What does that mean for the structure of universities? Who guards the truth? And what is the role of universities in creating it? What does that mean for education, for intellectual property and its exploitations? And how is this different in different cultures? In December 2020, the Future Office of the National University of Singapore commissioned an essay for the future of universities. That essay addressed some of the questions raised above and left many unanswered. It also made clear that there is a need for a series of enlightening visions about possible futures of the university. To develop such visions, 12 leading thinkers from different continents, countries, and cultures were invited to write an essay presenting their views on the future of universities. All were free to present their visions from their perspective and to address issues they think are most relevant for the future. All initially accepted the challenge, but subsequently and unfortunately, global politics and local circumstances created dangers for some to express themselves freely and made it impossible for them to actually write down their views. So not all 12 people wrote an essay. There were only in the end 9 essays written, including the trigger essay, and they're collected in the book Fit for Purpose. They are connected by the sincere concern of the writers for the future of universities and by the authority that comes with the positions they hold or held in society and the experience they have accumulated in their lives. One chapter stands out. It is the chapter that presents the view of 18 students from all over the world. Together, they provide a unique insight in what young people who only recently finished their university education or are still working in it, see as problems and needs for universities. Many of these students come from countries where it is dangerous to express themselves freely and openly. So for good reasons, they remain anonymous. The many similarities between the views expressed by the students and the writers of the other chapters, the other essays, in other words, are remarkable. They point to serious problems for universities worldwide, but also to a potentially powerful coalition of young and old, experienced and unexperienced people around the globe to address these problems. The book, Fit for Purpose, was not conceived as a manifest for action. Yet the 10 essays provide powerful material to inform, inspire, and crystallize discussions about the key issues that must be addressed if universities are to adapt to the changes in society, science, technological development, educational methods, and changes in the moral compasses steering society. The book starts with the essay that was commissioned by the NUS. Writing that essay was highly motivating and inspired the ideas to invite a broader spectrum of views for the future of universities. The first of the 9 essays describes the history of universities since its first inception, possibly 9,000 years ago. The writer, Zehnder, who is rightfully felt that the book about future universities should start with a shared story about its histories. His essay, How It All Began, provides an overview of these histories, covering the developments of universities in all continents and major cultures in the world, both past and present, ending with a description of traits common to all universities. In the last 200 years of that history, the Humboldt University has become the dominant model for universities in the world. As Alexander Renoy-Khan argues in his essay, Humboldt Universities as a role model, its success is based on a combination of 4 ingredients: education and research under one roof, academic community of scholars and students, a joint responsibility of public and private sectors for the university, and the principle of academic freedom and independence. The combination of these ingredients have been very successful and unquestionably has a future, but each of the ingredients are presently challenged. To secure the future of the universities, these challenges must be taken seriously. One may argue that these challenges to a large extent emerge from entangled global complex adaptive systems that are being subjected to disruptive transitions, or better, that these disruptive transitions form the dynamic context within which future universities need to find a role. In his essay, The Role of Universities in Disruptive Transitions, Sean Cleary provides an historical background and context for the extraordinary times that we're in. We are now confronted with 6 interlocking challenges that demand our attention and response. They're all mentioned in the book, so I won't mention them here. When addressing these challenges, we need to recognize and take into account the key characteristics of the complex adaptive systems that we are part of. Then, looking at the future at the universities, Sean Cleary describes the implication of all that for their future role. As Alexander Renoy-Khan wrote, the last 200 years have seen a rapid and global spread of the European model for universities as embodied in the Humboldt University. In his essay, Chinese Big Learning or Narrow Minds, Andrew Heng points out that China was a latecomer in this game. Andrew offers an enlightening insight into the role of higher education that higher education plays and has played in Chinese history. Projected against that history and more recent developments in China, Andrew asked whether the universities are presently configured, whether universities as presently configured serves an elite, serves the society as a whole, or serves itself. A highly relevant question for universities in China and for university in what is generally regarded as the West. In addressing that question, universities are best to be thought of complex adaptive systems within a wider context of changing complex adaptive systems, nature, society, and the cosmos. The normal changes that those systems have gone through in the last decennia have postponed universities and the knowledge, technologies, and ethics they generate. So they have postponed universities in the center of the geopolitics. They have positioned universities in the center of geopolitical rivalry between the West and the rest. And in that context, again, Andrew asked the questions, which is the source of the title of the book. Are universities now fit for purpose in the future? The 18 contributions of the students offer a mirror for the answer to that question. In his second essay, Drivers for Solutions, Alexander Zehnder, Sasha, addresses the question how universities have dealt with the tasks that society has relatively recently bestowed on them, namely to contribute significantly to solutions for sustainable human well-being, civilization, and security for all, through a forward-looking and proactive combination of education and cutting-edge research. Based on roughly 50 years of observation and findings while working in a variety of universities around the world, he analyzes global megatrends that will influence and challenge humanity, the strength of universities, the economic impact of universities, and the challenges facing universities. Projected against the global megatrends, these challenges can be summarized as the need to bridge the widening gap between science, the public, and politics. This analysis concludes with an answer to the question what needs to be fixed in order for universities to be fit for the future. Future ready or ready for purpose. I will skip some of these chapters because actually it's an invitation to read the book. And if I tell you what is in the chapters, you won't read it. So I'll skip the 2 chapters, but I'll come to an end. There is universities, are they future ready and ready for the purpose are they ready for purpose in the future? In the end, it are young people at the beginning of their productive lives who will transform the present into the future. Universities can be said to be future ready or ready for purpose in the future if they can deliver students who are future ready. The 18 ex-students who expressed their views on the future of universities provide some key elements of what being future ready really should mean. Now, having said all this, I mean, the book will expand on all that, and I think it's worthwhile to read it. It was definitely worthwhile to edit it. So I'd like to introduce my co-editor, Jonathan, to give his perspective as my co-editor. He is a young educator from the National University of Singapore. He is now working with the NUS Teaching Academy to explore the impact of AI on higher education and to propose educational policies on how the university can embrace it in a way that will enable not just students to be future ready, but also for educators and academics to remain ready for purpose in the future. Jonathan.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Sim. I'm a lecturer of philosophy at the National University of Singapore. I teach the philosophy of computing and data analysis. So we deal with the ethics of algorithms, the ethics of models, right? I also teach classical Chinese philosophy. So 2 very different things, but somehow it's all from the one person, right? Now, sorry, can I just go? I want to comment, well, there are many learning points from this book, and it has been a real honor and privilege for me to be a co-editor, right? There's one lesson out of many lessons that I wish to highlight from this book, which is the success of universities in the past can also be the stumbling blocks for universities in the future. And when this book came out, it was published sometime in November, right? We didn't expect AI, ChatGPT to come out, right? And so it is very fitting that this book came out around the same time as the chatbot. Now, it's very easy for us to talk about the future or the futures of universities in a very general and abstract way. But in many ways, I believe that the future is here. What do I mean? Because you see, just a show of hands, how many of you have actually played with ChatGPT? Okay, so for those of you who have not, okay, ChatGPT is one of many more artificial intelligence that we're going to see, right? It can write essays. I can take an MCQ multiple choice question. I can feed it in. It can answer. It can tell me which option is the correct option. Okay, I can get it to generate programming code. I can even feed it buggy programming code and ask it to fix it for me, right? I can get it to write essays. I can get it to write plays. I can get it to write poems. Now, in Singapore, there are many people who are using it in industries now. They're writing emails with ChatGPT, right? Some of the marketing texts are also being written by ChatGPT. Ryan Reynolds did a car advertisement, and he also used ChatGPT to do the text, right? So it's becoming more and more mainstream. And why is this a relevant question? You know, the future is here. It's because more and more students are going to go for internships. They're going to go into industries and they're going to see that the people at work are going to use AI, right? And they're going to say, why am I at university? Why am I paying all these school fees when all I just need to know is how to play with ChatGPT? As an educator, I realize I'm also at existential risk. Why? Because now if you go online, many students are saying, hey, ChatGPT can teach better than my teacher. And they're more, and the AI is more patient, you know, right? If you don't understand, you can still say, I don't understand, and the AI can respond. And this is only version 3. Version 4 is coming out later this year, and there's going to be version 5, version 6, right? And we can, and one of the chief AI scientists from UNSW has said that in the forthcoming versions, you can train it to speak in your own voice. Right now, if you play with ChatGPT for 1 hour, you're going to see that there's a very consistent writing style. Of course, you can say, oh, can you write it in the style of, let's say, Dr. Mahathir? It can do that, right? You can, it can learn and it can write in the style of Lee Kuan Yew as well, right? So we can do that. But in the future, it can learn from us and write in our own style. What does this mean for us as educators? What does it mean for us at work, right? Now, so there is a huge existential risk, okay? And at the National University of Singapore, I am right now working to research ways for us to add value because, like I said, students are going to say, if I can do all these things with AI, I don't need to come to university. So then what is my value as an educator? What is our value as a university so that students will say, I still want to come, I still want to get my degree, yeah? And it's very, of course, it's worrying. And one of the things that I want us to recognize is that it's not just a cheating tool. Because one of the scary things is that when we frame it as a cheating tool, it becomes framed as this taboo subject. Don't talk about it. Let's not touch it. In Australia right now, right? If you've been following the news, Australia, New York, all the universities have stopped continuous assessments. They've gone to closed book final exams, right? How drastic is that? Now, just think about it. We say, okay, all this AI is going to replace deep thinking, deep learning. But if we're so afraid of cheating that we go back to closed book final exams, then we're not giving students a chance to go further in their thinking, right? If we want students to think deeply, we can't give them 2-3 hours. We can't make them cram for a final exam, right? So, and one more thing also, this AI, ChatGPT is one of many, right? It's going to be here to stay. The CEO of Microsoft already said, Microsoft is made a deal, right? It's going to be in the productivity tools. You're going to see ChatGPT in Microsoft Word, Microsoft Outlook, PowerPoint and everything, right? So it's going to be here to stay. So we as educators, we need to figure out how we can embrace artificial intelligence in our teaching so that students can see the added value. That is the key, right? And of course, like I said just now, the things that have made universities successful are also the stumbling blocks for how we engage with the future. Now, let me explore 2 possibilities with which we can embrace AI, just so you know how big the revolution may be, right? The first is this, okay? We can get the AI to generate an essay, right? By my standards, I would give it a B, very rarely a B+, right? So there is still room for improvement, right? So we get the students to generate an essay and then we say, okay, we will grade you based on how you edit this essay. Maybe you turn on track changes in Microsoft Word so you can see the changes. Now, you notice that the learning objectives have changed. We're not teaching students how to write essays anymore. We're teaching them how to edit essays, right? So one way in which we embrace AI is that many, or in fact, most or all of our learning objectives will shift. And when this learning objective shifts, what happens? All our learning activities will change. So what's the problem? How many educators are willing to embrace this kind of change? It's a lot of work. I mean, I design one course. I teach like 500-600 students every semester. I have weekly assignments. I have to change every assignment. How many educators are willing to do that, right? So that's one. Now, another way in which we can embrace AI is we say, okay, let's move away from grades. Because if, let's say, AI can do everything in the future, can do everything that we do very well in terms of content generation, okay, then maybe we need to play up other areas like, building up their portfolio. Yeah, they may not be good at study, or they may be good at study, but we want them to be good at something else, teamwork, leadership, and stuff like that, right? Again, what's the problem that we will face? Many educators are going to say, this is not my job scope. This is not my KPI. Why should I care, right? So, I already, as a young educator, sometimes I talk to people, I say, I believe education should be this. Some educators, right, some faculty, they will say, no, why are you doing this? This is not your job, right? So we do need to have this question. And of course, maybe to help frame our discussions of AI, is we tend to think of AI purely in terms of like replacement. Because it's efficient, it's going to replace. But let me offer you two more categories. Rather than replacement, substitution, why not think of it as augmentation? How can AI augment us, assist us? Yeah, how can it add value to us, just as how we can add value to the work that AI does? Another category for thinking about it is, rather than in terms of efficiency, what about human flourishing? How can AI lead us towards greater human flourishing? If, for example, like say we learn to write better because of using the AI as a base, right? This kinds of exercises pushing us to think further, think deeply, right? So maybe this is the thing that we should consider. Yeah, augmentation rather than substitution, human flourishing rather than efficiency. Well, okay, that is all. Say, yeah, some food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. You didn't mention about Chat GPT writing a love letter. Now, if you use that to write to your girlfriend or wife, are you married? Okay, girlfriend. And if she uses Chat GPT to answer you, then what are you going to do? Yes. All right. So I leave that question to the panelists. Then we will have Q&A later, right? Including to both of you. Okay. So shall I invite the panelists to come up? There are 4 of you. I need another chair. You wouldn't. You don't want to be in the firing line? Oh, no. Don't mind, but I have to fire next to that. Oh, anyway. Okay. Okay, you come. Rafiq, and then Azman, and Shasha. I always call it Shasha. Actually, the right way to pronounce is Shasha. Okay. Okay, then I will. Okay. Okay, let me make a very quick introduction of all 4 of them, so that I don't have to introduce them one by one when they are about to speak. Yeah, to my right is Professor Dr. Lily Chan, Chief Executive and Vice Chancellor of WOU since 2019. And we're very fortunate to have her. She came to us after having led a very illustrious career as the CEO of NUS Enterprise. So she is one case of reverse brain drain. And so she managed to, in her 14 years, right? 14 years, she managed to build up the startup ecosystem in Singapore. Prior to that, she successfully managed and grew Singapore's biotech fund to over 80 investments. I can't remember the no need. After having led a company called Gen Labs Diagnostic Singapore and obtained 3 patents. She's a scientist by training, and she will brief on her experience in the digital transformation journey. Then to my right is none other than Tan Sri Azman Mohktar. Some of you know very well. Presently, the chairman of INCEIF, INCEIF, International Center for Education for Islamic Finance in Malaysia, which has a university status almost since the beginning, and the chairman of the board of directors of Universiti Technology Malaysia. Yeah, he's well known for his 14-year tenure as the managing director until mid-2018 of Malaysia's Khazanah Nasional, which he successfully grew into a leading sovereign fund in ASEAN. After that, he spent 2 years as a distinguished fellow in Cambridge, where he earlier obtained his MPhil in developmental studies. And he is also known to some of us for his famous venture around the world in 77 days on 77 trains. Amazing, isn't it? Before COVID, yes, BC. Okay. So it's BW, which also means Bangunan Wawasan, really, and BC, okay? Now, we are proud to have him as a member of the Wawasan Education Foundation. So he'll comment on how he sees universities play a transformative role. Then to my left is Dr. Sasha Alexander Zehnder, a world-renowned water expert with degrees in chemistry, whole range of chemistry, with decades of experience. He is a visiting professor and a member of the board of trustees of NTU, Nanyang Technological University of Singapore, a professor emeritus of ETH Zurich. He was the president of the ETH board, overseeing the Swiss Federation Institutes of Technology in both Zurich and Lausanne. He's a contributor to 2 chapters in the new book just launched. So he will share with us his experience in Europe, US, and Singapore, and how he sees the role of universities. And to the far left is Professor Dr. Rafiq Adikan, an award-winning expert in optoelectronics, or commonly known as photonics. But it's a very wide field, and he specialized, he's got quite a few awards for that. He's presently professor in the School of Electrical Electronics Engineering in USM, right here, after having achieved very outstanding results in his 3-year term as USM's Vice Chancellor until October last year. Prior to that, he served Universiti Malaya for 22 years, rising to the position of Deputy Vice Chancellor Development. And he has also won many awards and accolades, both as academic and administrator. So he will also share his experience. Okay, so can we then, yeah, you want to start first as partly the host? Yeah. Yeah.
I was told not to do slides, but I will do slides.
Okay. Can we just move our chair?
So it's very short, just 10 minutes, mainly because it's post-Prandtl period. So instead of just talking, where's the clip? It's just 10 minutes, very quickly, because I need to position the university, and I felt it was easier to position it through slides than, talk about who we are, just talking about it. We are an ODL university, or OFDL as sometimes it's called. What does it mean? Open and flexible, distance and digital. What that means is we do not have students on campus. The students only show up on campus when they go for tutorials when needed. After COVID, many do not want to make the journey to come back. But that also meant for a university like ours, economies of scale. We can have a tutor in Penang working with students from Sabah, Sarawak, and wherever. So this is what we have accomplished as an outcome. Our learning platform is very important. And the content we have are self-instructional materials and contents. So our faculty members have to work on their own or with other colleagues or experts in other universities to come out with the course content so that they can study on their own. So this is the basis of what our university is all about. I also want to revisit why this university was first started. Established in 2006 with a unique and socially responsible objective. And that objective is to provide Malaysian working adults access to quality education via ODL, regardless of their ethnic and social economic background. I think this is very important as we build this university. But why ODL? It's scale. You can teach at scale. Beyond Malaysia, you can go beyond Malaysia. Within Malaysia, beyond Malaysia, wherever you can have access to 3G, 4G, or 5G data. Ease of reach to large number of learners, minimal physical buildings and infrastructure. This is one. The other one is on the main campus. Many of you have seen it. And most importantly, technology enablement. Next slide. Okay. I also want to emphasize that in Malaysia, maybe the numbers have changed, but as of last count in August 2022, 427 private higher learning institutions in Malaysia for about 1 million students. So highly competitive background. We are one of 4 that is open distance learning. There are some universities now have gotten 2 licenses, but we are still in a different mode. And oftentimes we forget, right? I'm not going to go into this, but 2 biggest future trends post-pandemic, and even it's been developing pre-pandemic, was rethinking what we teach and how we teach. I just wanted to show the kinds of students we have. We're fortunate in the sense that our university has been given the license, which we call prior experiential learning, APEL, Advanced Prior Experiential Learning. So if you work for a few years, we can accredit you to come in with the necessary qualifications to start university. 50% of our students come in through that route. Very important, which means that our students are not the 18-year-olds or the 19-year-olds. They are in their early 20s. Over 85% of our students are below 40. So we are targeting at a category young working adults. Over 90% of our students are all working adults. So they are doing something. They may be Grab drivers, they may be running their own businesses, so on and so forth. Majority are from MNCs and SMEs. So we do have the data for that. We have 2 modes of study. One is, we call it, because they're mostly working adults, it's a work study model. They work during the day, they study at night, they study on the weekend. with self-instructional materials, with a learning platform. I think we're falling apart. The second one is a work-study model program that was started about a year and a half ago, but it took us another year before then to get MQA to accredit us. And that, let me talk about it. Sorry. This is the School of Digital Technology. The location is this. We renovated this building. It's a 100-year-old building. I want to make it very simple, very easy, very open, so that there are no fixed classrooms. Even faculty members do not have an office. It took a while for some of them to understand, but the younger ones who came in, the younger faculty members are okay with it, right? So they carry their computer, they walk around, so they have no files, no paper, no nothing. At the end of 1 year of their study, this group of students, we can place them in any company. And in those companies, they go in as apprentices, not interns. Because at the end of 1 year, we've given them enough skill sets to get going in the company. Our pilot run was 20 students. All 20 of them were placed. In fact, the companies are asking for more. So at the moment, we have maybe about 80 students. We're ramping up the program. Hopefully this building will be filled with all of them. Some of them are actually quite, how to say, they go in and they make 1,000 ringgit for the month. After 2 months, they think they've learned something. Another company will hire them for 3,000 ringgit a month. So this is the group of students that we have right now. Recently, our 2 young faculty members, Jonathan's age, just got an award from Meranti, and Meranti was shocked, telling these 2 young people, I didn't know WOU have young people. I thought it's a school for senior citizens. So obviously there is a lot to do from my end. I have to make sure the message goes out. They could have won it in their category, but there was a certain question mark from the judges because they've never heard of WOU. They didn't know WOU has young faculty members and young students, and they didn't expect WOU to have a program like this. So there's a lot of work to do. So I'm just highlighting what we have done. We would like to continue to do these programs in digital supply chain management. Very, very obvious, can be easily done. We already have degrees in this. We can easily convert some of our programs into this. And the team is also working very hard on TVET degrees. We just submitted the TVET to MQA. MQA said, you're the first university in Malaysia to come to us with this. We don't know how to accredit you. So our team has worked closely with the Malaysian Qualification Agency to make sure they can qualify us and get this going. So I think in the last 2 years, even though it was during the pandemic period, the team has been working across the board. And I tell them, I said, look, we're ODL University. You should be able to work with one another, whether you're in KL, Johor, or in Penang. So I think I'm quite proud that the team has done this. I just want to bring us back. Penang, we're in Penang. This university is actually strategically located. How do we take this university to a different level? I think this morning I asked a provocative question. I personally believe it can be done, but it needs the help of everyone in here. We're in the center of the Silicon Valley of the East. We're also in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Our students, let me just take one program. They come from all these companies. So they are from the community, right, in northern Malaysia. And 76% of them are in the Gen Y age group. What we wanted to do for this university, most important, is the digital platform, the digital transformation of this university. That is the most important thing that needs to be done. Now, this is taken out from one of the KPMG diagrams, but essentially what we want to do, and this, when they write consultancy articles, they give you the advice, but the advice is the vision. we need to make sure that that vision can be executed. So this is what we have right now. They're all in silos. How do we integrate all this into one learning platform and one information platform? The team wants to make sure the learning experience is very important. I think in this morning's conversation, some of the younger people say the student experience is the most important part. How do you do student experience on an online platform? Very important. And how do you engage students across the whole of Malaysia, not to say outside of Malaysia in the future? So this is what we're trying to do. And my hope is that one day I can just use my mobile phone. I'm not a digital native. I have to learn it. And most of it is learned from the students who tell me, nah, this is the wrong app to use. You should use this and you should use that. I can't learn it from my son. He's too impatient. I can't learn it from my husband. He's also too impatient. So I have to learn it from my students. So I'm hoping that one day on my phone, I have access to all the information. I know who is who. And the students can also know how they are progressing because they're all working adults. It may take them 7 years to get the degree. They don't remember what courses they've taken and what courses they need to take. So we're slowly integrating a platform like that. I do want to show an example of a transformation that was done with a very small team in WOU that I hope can replicate throughout the whole university. Faisal, can you? This is the team that was responsible for putting our learning management system together. It's only just a minute. There's no sound. So we started in August 2020. We migrated contents and we created a whole new platform. Dr. Devi is the head of this group. She came in and there's a whole group of people and she had to change the way they think. So she was running it with Scrum, running it with Agile way of looking at things. The FlexLearn is the template that we are using. They've gone through 1.0. All the staff members went to LinkedIn and learned on their own how to do all these things. It is now fully managed online. She doesn't even have to show up in the office. She knows who is doing what, right? So this is just a quick timeline that she did for me of what they have done. Everything was learned online during the COVID period. February 2022, we're almost there. So now we can do audio and media in our platform. And we've started to copyright what we have done. And they regroup all the time in here, anywhere. And there are only 12 of them. We're still ways away from doing things, but 2023, they're starting to introduce gaming in the course content. I think that's no one more slide. They've started to put language in there. They've tested it with communities, pilot tested. The templates are rolled out to all the faculty members, tutors, and all that. Most interestingly, young people need fancy names. Learning technology is not a graphic designer. So we had to change the way the young people who come in and their job titles. This is the last one, I think. And the journey continues. So as we're doing this, now we have Chat GPT coming in. So this team will also have to grapple with that. Love to work with Jonathan. So that's all I have to say. You can now come back and sit.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Azman, I don't want you to sit there alone. We'll accompany you. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Tan Sri Ko and Lily and everybody.
And thank you.
Thank you, WOU and GIOS. Okay, I'll try to make a contribution on the topic role of universities in digital transformation. If I can rephrase that, so that my non-chat GPT brain can understand role of universities in an era of digital transformation, because I don't think you got to put the cart, you shouldn't be putting cart before horse. So I won't repeat, but I guess to me, what matters most is to figure out how do we use those digital tools to reclaim whatever the right role of universities are. So my background is more of a corporate guy, financial guy, but also involved in nation building, I suppose, through my various roles. Also, if I can just get this out there, I'm chairing a couple of universities in Malaysia now. One is University Technology Malaysia, UTM. If I can sketch this, we just celebrated our 50th year as a university, which for Malaysia is fairly old, but actually it's a 114-year-old entity, because it started during the British colonial time as basically a technical college out of Gurney Road, back in KL, right? And the history of UTM contributing to nation building through solving engineering problems, providing the human capital, I think is fairly synonymous with the history of the country. Today, you go to JKR, for example, the top management, I think about 70% are UTM students. I was very pleased last year when we had a get-together here. At a time when Intel had just announced, I think, a $7 billion investment into Penang. And then CK and SK Fong spoke about, I think you guys are Intel veterans, 28 years, 30 years, but saw it fit to actually go and start your own companies, which is always a great thing. Then I was very happy to discover that you're also UTM alumni, and then they said, I need engineers. So I immediately got my Vice Chancellor to better start the program. I'm sure USM has something to produce. Today, you tell me a bit slow. They will get a call this afternoon. But anyway, my job is to figure out. Okay. But UTM, of course, is more of the old engineering type of technology, So just now, Lily, I saw you said Meranti. So the CEO of Meranti, I brought her to be on the board of UTM. Zulera is actually one of our Kazana alumni, So Zoo, partly to make it more digital in that sense. So the first one, role of university, I'm not an academic per se, although I've got some connections here and there. I would say it's three things. Solve society's problems, I think, is the role of university, by giving it a body of knowledge and applied research, and the people they need to produce, right? So at different stages. So this will apply differently for different countries at different stages of development, actually. Second is to earn a job. I think this is very practical. I note some numbers as a report by KPMG that there's basically been an oversupply, especially in the West. Everybody's got a degree now, a lot of people got a degree, and therefore when there's too much supply, value goes down in certain jobs. In fact, having a degree is even a disadvantage. The dropout rates on certain things, because people go out, there are startups, there are other things. And I know, and we were affiliated, I opened an office in Silicon Valley at Kazana to invest, but also to connect. And for a while, we were working with something called Singularity University. Some of you may have heard of it. In fact, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. They are not a university. They tried to be a university, but they cannot be a university because their curriculum was changing every other week, which apparently the accreditation organization in the US doesn't allow that. But they have 10 problems they want to solve, and they want to use technology. And as you know, it's done at a former NASA kind of a research center somewhere in the valley. I didn't quite follow up. I think this is Ray Kurzweil and all that. I think they seem to have hit certainly. But the point is, it's not even a university. And then, of course, all the micro-credentialing, Udacity, these are all trends, right? ultimately, I think the role of a university or any knowledge thinking organization, think tank, is to make all of us better human beings. I think this is extremely key. I'm fascinated by ChatGPT. I haven't quite gotten into it yet. I will do that. But at Khazanah, we had one of our mega trends. We had this theme called algorithm versus cerebrum. You know, this thing about AI versus human. The conclusion was, who knows, AI win ke, human intelligence win ke, but AI, there will probably never be AW, artificial wisdom. And this is our great advantage as human beings, is to be human, actually. If we can be human, we should be wise. Machine will learn. I'm sure machine will learn, will be very good. We have another saying, do the right things right in the right way. This is my mantra in Khazanah. Do the right things right is about making choices. You can't do everything. It's usually about strategy, picking up where, right? Doing it right is about being efficient. I think that one, the machine champion. We cannot challenge, right? The machine is champion. But in the right way is actually about ethics, about being fair, about doing it in the right way, in a proportionate way, in a measured way. And that part, I think humans, if we lose that, then we lose not just our humanity, it'll be the age of machines, right? Because they are definitely better than that. So I'm not that worried about AI per se. So the point about digital transformation, then we know the difference between digitization, which needs to be done, all the system integration, and actually, Lily, I need to talk to you because I'm quite wowed by what WOU has been doing. There's a lot of stuff that you've done there. That digital infrastructure. For the Malaysians in this room as well, I just want to make one point. In addition to that, is the investment the country is making on this 5G network. It's somewhat of a leapfrog. Controversial, because as you can see in the debate about whether this thing should be a monopoly, blah, blah, blah. But if we put that aside, we are actually going to roll out one of the fastest, the coverage. I think 85% of the peninsula is going to get 5G, etc., etc. And once you have that, then fixed lines, etc. By and large, you have basically the digital infrastructure. This is quite a game changer if you think about it, right? And UTM actually, we are working with both Huawei and Ericsson actually on this. We already have a project. I'll come to why I think ultimately I wanted to end about not 30 feet, not 30,000, but 3 feet project. I'm very project driven, look at impact, okay? Now, so UTM is one. The other one that I'm on, so UTM has 25,000 students, about 10% are foreign, 5,000 staff faculty. So one of those large, one of the 21, 22 public universities that is large. I don't know how we are in the ranking stuff. We are apparently top 100 in the world as an engineering school, but not so much the digital side. That one, ultimately, we are focused about impact, both at industry level and at social level. Water, for example, water membrane technology. We have world-class researchers. We're rolling that out, in various places, as an example. The other university I chair is called INSIAF, which is about Islamic finance. It's under Bank Negara. It's a fairly niche. It's actually a graduate university with about 600 students. Roughly half and half Malaysian and international. And roughly half and half actually do it online and half do it in person or variations of that, right? So essentially the future, I suppose, arrived early in 2020 with COVID-19, right? And this affected many industries, many sectors, e-commerce, online meetings, and of course education, right? So in many sense, we benefited from that because we were already on that business model. I'm sure the others are changing, and we have that possibility of doing that further, right? So how do we put all this together? I think, if we believe the role of universities should still be solve society's problems or help solve society's problems, equip the students to earn a decent job and living, and also be better human beings, ultimately, right? To me, very briefly on what are the society's problems, because I want to end with projects again, right? climate change, inequality, and then whatever social ills, I think it's stuff that we need to solve. So in that regard, maybe I just try to put it all together, what I see, which we mentioned in the smaller group earlier on what WOU and Penang actually can do actually within all this. I think one is to understand that if we can create university as part of a convening platform to bring together certain streams in order to do all of the above, right? For example, to solve some of those problems, let's take inequality as manifested in the issue of cost of living and food supply chain currently, right? Not just here in Georgetown, but on the mainland. What can we do to use your networks, your students, those working in that very impressive list of MNCs actually, to go out to help to hack the system to, I don't know, to reduce the price of roti canai by 20% within 6 months, for example. Some very, I'm interested in this kind of projects, and then we get a sponsor, and you get a team of volunteers, and you get a multidisciplinary team to go and solve this. One of the projects we're working with at INSEF is with the Zakat authorities in Kedah. Kedah is a state, of course, a neighboring state. We're working to use the Zakat and Wakaf money to help Orang Asli folks, actually, using Islamic finance research with Bank Islam as a banking partner, as an industry partner. It's very action-oriented, very targeted, but behind there, the scholars are putting this, thinking through some of the stuff around Islamic finance, very, very abstract concepts that actually translate into action. To me, that will begin to use all this. Now, how digital is that? I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. But I would have thought food supply chain, for example, the information is key. During the COVID, my wife was buying fish from this incredible lady, basically doing online auction in Lumot. This lady, this Malay lady, and then behind the fisherman, the guy is this Chinese guy, and then she go, but she's very good at it, and we get it like the following day. Somehow the logistics chain worked, but I'm sure that one has cut many layers of whatever middle people need, because there's price discovery, and then there's auction, there's etc. of a perishable and all that, right? So finally is to say, I think the digital stuff is a tool. We've got to be ready, digitization, getting the MOOCs, etc. In order to fulfill that role of university. For me, ultimately, the proof of concept is in the project, in how the students are able to get hired. For example, UTM, supposedly we top all the public institutions, we're 97% get jobs. Of course, quality of jobs, etc. I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure it can do better. This is a national issue. And maybe one final point about Penang and the atmosphere, actually. So to be able to fulfill this role, universities, think tanks, you have to have the freedom to think. I was quite taken by Jan when you mentioned about those people who wrote those essays, right? Yeah, some of those people didn't want to put down their names, right? Because it sounds like, whoa, it was toxic, they cannot write. So I think for the Malaysians here, that, this year is how many years? Will be about 66 years old as a country. The first 46 years, we had like 4 prime ministers. I think the last 5 years we've had, I cannot count it, 5 or 6, something like that, right? A lot. But actually what happened in 2018 now, freedom of thought, expression is very noisy, very, very messy even. But I think now you can more or less say whatever you want to say. The competition for ideas, all this is quite noisy. So I think this is a good thing. It's a good thing. Indonesia went through this earlier. And this is a good thing because those ingredients. So if you think about it, atmosphere, no jerebu like this, you can think and write and whatever, what you need to do. And this is where the open university and in the open advanced studies. And you get this diversity of views. We need to have that convening platforms. I think this is one of them. And then you must have the heart in the right place. This is where the ethics and to go and do the right things. And this is where I think those interventions need to come, and the university and the think tank has a role. And we should be the connectors. And Penang, I would finally submit, has both a history and a future in doing that. You guys are rebels. You guys are misfits. This has always been a home for misfits, rebels, hasn't it? From Acenis to Sun Yat-sen to Tagore to whatever lah. You also have a Penangite now in the Prajaya lah, in the big office, etc. etc. I don't know. I mean, I stand there. I mean, here the social capital is strong, has always been, and I think if we can connect all that, these are all building blocks, but finally land on those impact projects. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azman. Yes, we also have another Anwar here, Anwar Faisal, Dato Sri, who has been in the forefront of consumer movement, sustainability, inclusiveness, etc. But you don't, today we are not asking him to speak because he will take us through the whole world and the whole history. There's a lot of resources. In fact, his library is called a Go Down, and you have to visit it one day. It's really impressive, and it's like a Go Down, literally. Okay, where he has also, a lot of it is also digital now. All right, so yes, Penang is special. We have a lot of rebels. Anwar actually was responsible. Anwar here, not the other Anwar, also. Right, it started a lot of movements here. The CAP, Consumer Association of Penang, was a Third World Network, was initiated by him and Martin and SM Idris. Yeah, and I actually, in a way, I was baptized by them, in the sense that when I came back, I went through the civil society before I went, perhaps by mistake, into politics. Anyway, so that gives you the sense of what Penang has been and what Penang can be as part of Malaysia, contributing to Malaysia, and in the context of ASEAN. So now I move on to our good friend from which country shall I? The world citizen. Okay. Okay. And his name pronounced in Russian, is it? Sasha. Okay. Sasha. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now you can review your identity, right?
Yeah. So I'm okay. So, but just to tell you, because what I say afterwards is really my last 50 years. Probably 55. So you get older every year. So you don't have an overview on counting anymore. But my basic career was in academia. I've been assistant professor in Stanford. So I worked in Wisconsin. So I got a little bit the glimpse in at MIT as well. I got the glimpse how the American system works. I was then in Holland, in Wageningen for 10 years, in the Agriculture University. Then I came to Switzerland, and I was also professor at the ETH in Zurich, and was running the Water Research Institute. And then I came here to Singapore, so to see how the universities work here. I think I have a little bit the feeling of how about this animals university, how they really function and so. And I would like to, and I come out of an experimental science. So we are not afraid of ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is not going in the lab. So, and doing all these kinds of work, which have to be hard, and you have to get every data together. Cheating there is only if you cheat personally, but so in general, you can also not steal too much from others, because it will be immediately seen. So
social science is in a more difficult corner than we as experimental scientists. So many things I will tell you, you have to see, I see them out of my perspective also. It may be slightly different in different corners. But I would say, so I would like first to come where the universities are really good in. And the first one is absolute, my eyes, is the curiosity-driven research. They are the best what you can imagine, because it's a highly competitive field. People are around the world working in these fields, and the good ideas will somehow come out if we give them enough time. And enough time is say somewhere between 1 and about 5 or 10 years. So this part is really nobody else can do it. And if you look where the big breakthroughs were, not in the application of something, but the real findings where things have been done the first time, it's mostly in universities, except perhaps Edison in the Bell Lab, but that's very rare. Normally, it's the university. It's these crazy guys, you know, who are absolutely social figures. What I said this morning, egomaniacs. They are standing there in the lab. They are actually drilling. They make their students work hard and so. But the thing is, the university is the place where this kind of crazy figures can be productive for the society as a whole. Imagine somebody like that in a company, it will destroy everything. But in a university, it's the place where these people can be and actually do a contribution to it. And if you have been once a president of a university, and you probably know what I'm talking about, so I think this is something which the universities are extremely good at. And if you look how they select the people they hire, they ask them how well you have done in research, how many good paper in the best journals you have, and so they will be selected not based on the team player, but based on individual performance. And this individual performance may not have anything to do with the rest of the university. But these are kind of, if you want to, the beacons the university wants to attract. And this is important because I come later on it where they are named actually not so good. And I would say this is the most important thing. It's this curiosity-driven research and this individualism, which is on a very high level. The second one is education. It has been said several times already. Universities are here to educate the leaders of the future. Universities are not here to educate everybody the same way. And I think we have to learn and we have to accept universities must have a certain degree of elitism. Good science is elitarian. And the universities are the place where these things can happen. And when the industry came to me and said, you know, your students cannot be used immediately when they start, I said, well, you know, universities are actually educating the people you need, not the people you want. Because what we see also that everything changes very fast. So if you are actually concentrated on what's happening at the actual moment, you're probably too late afterwards. So you have to educate people who are highly flexible, highly adaptive. They know something and they can actually also make changes and follow changes in the place they go. We have other schools and educational system where you train people who can be immediately used at the workbench. But I think universities have to go beyond that. They have really to educate the future leaders. So we have talked about the MOOCs and flipped classroom and all these kind of things. I think this all has part of it, but the university has also a social educational aspects. And that's why you cannot put everything digital. Humans are not loners. Well, you have some of them, but I would say in general, we are actually herd animals. So we need to be in groups and to function like that, and then you can actually get the best out of the people. So digitalization is good as a supporting material, but to actually educate a social compatible human being, you need this contact of people together. So this is very important. Then universities are somehow democratic or chaotic. It depends a little bit how you see it, in what position you are. But universities as a system, oh no, let me turn around. In the world, we have two institutions which have survived almost anything. Political systems, revolutions, and so. This is the Vatican and the universities, probably thousands of years more than the Vatican. And the universities have survived because they were highly adaptable. They were chaotic. You couldn't really catch them. You couldn't implement too much. Yeah, you have to maybe say something without putting your name, but you have learned to say it. So it can be heard outside. You may go through phases where it's difficult. So these are basically the three really aspects of the university which no other institution in the world can. The universities, that's their place. That is where they are good. Where they are also good, maybe a little bit plus and minus, is in the quality control. And we had an argument this morning about the quality control. The quality control is basically at the moment is publication. The individualism, if you want to, is highly, and you have all this ranking stuff, and everybody runs after the ranking stuff, and we know in which journals we have to publish to be highly ranked and all these kind of things. But interestingly, you don't have a bad university in a high rank. Maybe, you know, you are, whether you are number 50 or number 70 doesn't really make a difference. But it makes a difference whether you are among the top 20 or you are 450. And the good universities are all up there, where people learn a lot, where good science is done, where good education is done. They are all up there. So it is maybe a surrogate of measurement. And we are from time to time run by too many administrators. And administrators like to have numbers which they can actually count together until about the 7th position after the comma, and say this one is a little bit better, and there at where it doesn't matter anymore, is a slight difference. It is, I would say, not ideal. You have to take it with a grain of salt, but it's a good indicator. At the end of the day, it's a very good indicator. So now there is one other thing which we may have not, and you have really put the finger on it, in the sense that universities should be the ideological free space in the world, in a world which becomes more and more ideological. And we have already in universities kind of that we are under pressure there. You have cancel culture taking place in universities. And as a president of a university, I would have interfered immediately. No way. Because if we lose that space as a humanity, we lose a large part of our human, the way we are humans. And I think there the universities have to fight against everything to keep that freedom of ideology. Now, universities have also kind of negative aspects. And I prepared you already. We have a lot of individuals, and we have a lot of loners, and we have a lot of egomaniacs. The moment you have to tackle a problem which is highly interdisciplinary, and where not the number of publication is really the measure, but where the outcome of what you are doing is the measure, universities are bad. They will tell you and will write you the nicest paper you want to, that they are interdisciplinary and everybody works together and they make these great breakthroughs and so. They get the money and everybody does whatever they have done, and then they come back and write the paper where they show that they have done this big thing. But basically, it's on loose sand. And that's where the think tanks have a place. Because think tanks, they're not counting on publication on the quality. Think tanks are counting or measured on what the outcome is. So the people working in a think tank would not be feeling well in a university and vice versa. It's a different type of breed of people. People who want to contribute have to go in a think tank. And people who want to find the last frontier go to a university. So it is different. It's a different way of doing it. And not one thing is better than the other. Now you would ask me, why do we have to fight if we are a think tank? Why do we have to fight so hard to actually get the finances and the room for us? The university, that's actually also a negative aspect of the university. And I have heard many university presidents, and I can tell you, I've seen many of them, who said, we don't need these think tanks. We have all the knowledge in the house. They are right, but they are not able to bring the knowledge together. And the think tanks are those people who are able to bring this knowledge together. So, a last point which I wanted to say is, maybe if we have, do we have a politician in his room? Not an old one who has learned what but the thing is, what you can do, I have a graphic in this book, is I looked actually on the amount of money invested by countries into their higher education and the research. And you can see, it is actually, I draw a linear line in there, but it's actually, if you look as a mathematician, it looks more like a slightly exponential line. Is that the more you invest in education and research, the higher the GDP of the country is. So whatever you do, if you educate your people right, if you give them the freedom to move, if you give them all these degrees of freedom, the whole society will, at the end of the day, profit from it. So this is my message. Kind of, universities have their huge strengths, and they should be supported, and it will show at the end in the GDP of the country. However, universities are bad when we come to this more kind of societal questions. And the big, I would say for me, the real big issues in the future is kind of the industrialization, of the change of industrialization. We had a discussion that we are losing jobs and so on. But we are in a changing time. It's a new industry coming up, and we have heard certain aspects of it. And I'm a very positive person. I always think we're going to make it as humanity. Maybe we'll have a few collateral damages, but as a society, we will make it. The other one is globalization, which is tremendously under pressure because it has its goods and its bad side. But at the end of the day, if we as humanity are not globalized, we will not be able to solve the challenges which are global at the moment, and we are not globalized. The third one was basically the digitization. How do we get the new world in this direction? And all these three challenges can still be handled somehow with classical way of the approach we have learned, kind of cost-benefit analysis and all these kind of things. However, the fourth challenge cannot be solved And that is what I call sustainabilization, an awkward word. But it is basically, we are not anymore humans alone. We are destroying the base of our survival. It's the earth doesn't care about us. You know, we go over. As the dinosaurs came and gone, humans will come and go. The earth just will stay there for a few million years and recover and have some other strange beasts here. So it is on us. It's our issue. And we have not learned yet how to deal with it. And I think there, the universities and the think tanks together can actually bring solutions. The university will educate the good people. The think tanks, or whatever structure we have around it, will actually try to bring them together to find out some solutions. So with that, I would like to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, call upon Rafiq to have your say.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi and salam sejahtera. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. I was whispering to Shastra just now. I saw his note and said, "Would you please leave some points for me to say something about?" So unfortunately, he's taken all the points. I'm sorry for arriving late today. I was across in Taiping, where I attended a graduation ceremony of a bunch of 17-year-olds. And MRSM Taiping is one of the 50 MRSM, and it's the top boarding school. And in that procession, you have the best students who graduate with a CGPA of 3.99. He's a captain of the rugby team. He debates. He plays musical instruments, and so on and so forth. You wish that those are the kind of students that will register to your university, because then the question would be, how do you make someone who is good become great, or someone who's great become greater? And I think to your question just now, with regards to, well, if you ask me whether universities are fit for purpose 4 months ago, while I was the VC of USM, I will feel the pressure. But I'm now a peasant, a commoner, so there's no pressure anymore. But I think it's a layered question, if you like. So I think there's when we were here a couple of months ago, when Prof. Hachun Jang was discussing his book Edible Economics, he quoted the Swedish that says, "Save people there, save people there." So meaning to say that if you are in a relatively a good environment, where the environment is very supportive of you, and you come from, in a way, a privileged upbringing, then you dare to do things. And I think there's also an economist, I'm very impressed with economists when they actually put some quotes. I think William Gibson says that the future is here, but they're not evenly distributed, right? The future is here, but they're not evenly distributed. Now, why do I say that point? So USM, I'm going to share with you some of my experience with USM. USM is 10,000 strong in terms of staff and 35,000 students. And if you ask me what are the purposes of the university, it's layered. It depends on what kind of students you have to grapple with. So from that, from 35,000 students, 15,000 full-time undergraduates, at least 60 or 70% of them comes from B40 families. So B40 people with a household income of 4,800 ringgit and less. And when I joined USM in 2019, 1 in every 10 of our students come from B1 family. These are household that earns 1,000 ringgit and below. These are the poorest of poor. And what's worrying is that as I left the job in 2022, that number became 2 out of 10. So this inequality, this poverty, this income gap has actually increased. Now, for those type of students, university's purpose is social mobility. It is still about finding them a good job, graduate employability. So measure the performance of a university in one sense, as Tan Sri Azman mentioned just now. They They need to, of course, you want to produce upstanding citizens, but you don't want them to start off with having them to be helped in that sense. So yeah, that's as a platform for social mobility, I think the public universities are still there. The fees are 97% subsidized. But what's also worrying is that if you take the case of USM, for example, or the national statistics, last year we had 90.5% graduate employability, which is, if you take a period of 6 months after they graduate, how many of them receive a job offer? 90.5% of the 4,000 that graduate will receive a job offer. Unfortunately, only 67% will be employed in the area that they are trained in. Another 37% will be underemployed. If you take those students who receive zakat, meaning to say these are from the poor family zakat, although 76% will receive a job offer, only 56% will be underemployed. Some of them actually getting a salary of 1,500 and below, which is below the minimum wage. Now, if you look at the national statistics, I think 2 years ago, the Ministry of Higher Education compiled from 500,000 young people who actually entered the job market. If you come from a T20 family, these are the well-off family, you have a 15% higher probability of securing a job compared to the B40s. These are like for like in terms of CGPA. So obviously there's something missing there in terms of exposure. And I think the T20s, the ones who can make ends meet. I mean, these are the people who would probably blame ChatGPT for writing the wrong love letter to the girlfriend, because the girlfriend will say, you know what, that sounded quite weird. So that's one of the functions, right? Regards to the purpose of a university. Now, obviously, when it comes to our role with digitalization, I think as Sasha mentioned just now, I tell my staff that the university is a test bed, an experimental bed. Whatever that happens, we have to experiment with that. But of course, we are limited in terms of funding. It's when I talk about finance or bringing money into a public university, people will see me in a very strange look, because public universities don't talk money. That's capitalism. You shouldn't come into the confines of a university, neoliberalism for that matter. They use all these nice terms. So what we did was we actually turned around the finances, and then we actually put money back into preparing the platform for young people to discover all this technology. We don't have to teach them even. I'll give you an example. Universiti Sains Malaysia is the first to adopt this beam scooter, electric beam. We don't have to do any marketing outside. We just put them there. They just use them, right? And in 2 months, they clocked about 14,000 kilometers, and that reduced the carbon footprint of the university. Of course, as mentioned earlier, obviously we come in to make sure that they are upstanding citizens, and so there must be some kind of direction in terms of what they use technology for. So one of the things also that Sasha mentioned just now is in terms of the worth of our professors. So in most cases, professors tend to be the most valuable asset that you have in a university, because they lead curiosity-driven research and whatnot. But at the same time, they are age challenged, to be politically correct. If they're not age challenged, they are hair challenged like me. And so the adoption of technologies, there's a gap between the adoption by these professors. Obviously, we have to put in some support for them to be appealing and all those things. And that is, again, something that university has to grapple with, because if you are a public university, you can't simply recruit, you can't simply let people go. You're stuck with the government scheme. You appoint administrators, they are grade N, and there's a specific work job, and you can't introduce newly sounding job scope unless JPA, the Public Services Department, will allow you to do so. So these are things that, again, making life difficult when it comes to how do we actually manage this, right? A couple of things that I like to share when it comes to how do you solve that. Before that, I'm going to just check if I've covered everything. Oh, by the way, USM also saw an increase in terms of international students. Back in 2019, we had about 2,000 international students. And now we are touching 9,000. We are the beneficiary of the China-US trade war. So lots of Chinese students come to USM. And as an ex-VC, you also think, okay, what would be the purpose of the university with regards to the international students? You know, obviously there's some social mobility there. You want them to be upstanding citizens in their own countries, but you lack the culture as well. So this is something that also we have to grapple with. A couple of things that I noticed. Everyone wants industry-ready students. But if you notice, I mean, Lily just now put the impressive list of all the MNCs, for example, yes? Now, whether we realize it or not, MNCs enjoy a lot of tax incentives from the government. And of course, there's a clause that by MIDA that says MNCs should contribute to higher education in Malaysia. But there's a loose term there. Any form of contributions will do. So if you take interns, for example, that's contributing to higher education. If you do a career fair, that's contribution to higher education. But I think the larger need is actually, again, to make ends meet. I'll give you an example. USM's annual budget is 1.2 billion ringgit, which is larger than the state of Penang. Now, from that 1.2 billion, 800 million goes to salaries. And that's locked. We can't fire, or we can't hire and fire, right? So whether people perform or not, you start with that 800 million. So we did something controversial where we actually cap our recruitment. We don't recruit anymore. It just has to cap. Now, in terms of government funding, they only pay us the emolument, the salaries, that's it. You have to pay your electricity bills yourself, water, and so on and so forth. So you have to roll the fees that you get from students. So 90% of your students are subsidized, so you have to focus on postgraduates. I guess what I'm trying to say is this. One, if you want to, I mean, I'm envious of Lily with WOU because you can do all these investments, you can, you know, do this. Understand, but, you know, if you have a 10,000 strong campus, you know, with campuses here in Kelantan and all those, the amount of investment is huge. We have 11 gig coming into the campus, but every student now use 4 devices. Their mobile phone, their laptop, their iPad, also whatnot. And some of them use them for online gaming, and they actually put you know, complaints that says, you know, I just lost my Mobile Legends because there's a ping delay, and because of the network sucks. And you know, we say, well, the network is meant for you to study, not to play Mobile Legends, anyways. So we need help. And I think contrary to what Sasha said, USM took the decision where we hold our hands up and say we need a lot of help from the industries, and not just for the career fair, not just for the internship, but more. For example, you give us, you know, industries, you give equipment for students to be familiar with. The technology is going so fast to the point where we can't purchase this in time. Our largest source of finance come from the Malaysia plan. And how Malaysia plans work is that you submit your proposal, your application right now, February, and it will be approved in October after the budget speech to be spent next year. Already there's a 1-year delay there. And if you know, you have to be involved in tendering and all those things, by the time you want to purchase something that is cool, it was already 2 years delayed. So we can't keep that up. There's something needs to be done in that sense collectively. I just like to just add one more thing, which is in terms of the university being an experimental bid. I completely agree. It should be a test bid for social experiments as well. So one of the biggest social experiments that we did in USM was we flipped the role in the sense that we told all the schools, all the deans, we're not going to set you any targets. You set your own targets. You look at your school. If you're an engineering school, you're obviously good in research and can publish papers, fine, you do that. But if you're a school of management, your forte is not in publication, then perhaps you can set a target to be financially good. And it was a very risky experiment because management tells that you should set targets, but it worked for USM. Our publication rose. Our finances, School of Management, for example, grew from 4 to 5 million ringgit in terms of fees income in 2019 to 17 million in 2 years. That's almost 4 times. And then of course we use that money to sponsor students, to do mobility programs, to send them abroad, to bring more academics from abroad. We adopted a gig economy approach to recruiting academics, and we have academics from at least 40 countries or 50 countries now in USM. So that's one of those social experiments that work, where we left academics to decide on their own. And as a university, we progress in all aspects. Finance, in terms of ranking, we are 4th in the world when it comes to SDGs. And again, all the numbers are up. And finally, we give more and more autonomy to students as well. So we've allowed them to do to conduct the campus election, and there's more and more engagement. One thing that worries me with regards to all things digitalization is, again, I think, as everyone mentioned, there must be a balance between technology adoption and also engagement. During COVID, the reach is good. We managed to reach, we introduced lots of offshore programs, but we also saw that there's an increasing number of students with mental health problems, and that's not good. And I think the solution to that is, again, to balance. You can be all digital, but at the same time, there must be some engagement there. We were the first to open our gates after COVID for students to come in, because 90% perhaps of the education in universities do not happen in classrooms. It's in the interaction with academics, interaction with their roommates, with international students, with industries, and so on and so forth. So on that sense, I think universities are still relevant in that sense, we prepare young people to discover themselves. And again, it will be worrying if we reduce that engagement as well. I hope I make sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rafiq. Well, our original plan was for the 4 panelists to answer Q&A and crossfire and all that. But I think it would be better that I invite the special speaker, Emeritus Professor Dr. Lai Choy Heng from NUS. Would you come up before I introduce you? And well, with all his degrees from Chicago, he actually took over from me as the head of the Malaysian mafia in Chicago before he came back, and then he was snatched by NUS. So he has been involved in high energy particle physics, nonlinear dynamics, quantum information science and technology, etc., most of which I don't understand. And then 2 years ago, he moved into applied research on complex systems, leading a team in the exploration of complexity science and applications, more specifically on the issue of urban resilience, for Singapore, which is an island state, identifying critical infrastructure interdependencies, tipping points, and forecasting early warning signals of possible breakdowns and disasters, etc. In other words, he's using complexity science to look at the real world and to also be able to forecast potentials of dangers, risk, etc. So very interesting. And his service in NUS has been all the way to the Professor of Physics, now Emeritus. And he also served as the former Executive Vice President of the Yale NUS College, which is now no longer, is being phased out. And not yet, 2 more years, okay? And then Vice Provost at the NUS. So I asked Choy to give his view. And then after that, we will have interactions amongst the 5 of them. And then we'll open to the floor for comments and questions. Okay, right, Choy.
You may not need this microphone. Let me start my comments by noting a resonance point with Jan's very first sentence in the preface of the book. It says, looking back in time, there is only one path that has led to the present. Looking forward, there are many infinite ways in which the future may unfold. Sounds very much like what physicists would like. There's a branching process as far as temporal evolution is concerned. Now, at one time, my three colleagues told me that the lesson that we learn from history is that we never learn from history. Things repeat. So I think that in preparing for us for the myriad of ways that the futures plural will unfold, we should probably pay some attention to the transition points in history and learn from the decisions made at that time. All right, the insights into the delicate balance or the lack of the pros and cons at each crossroad could very well provide us drunkards with the pertinent lampposts, not so much for support, but definitely for illumination, to guide us in charting the path towards one of the futures. Now, whatever comments that I'm going to be making for the rest of my presentation, I think let me start off with a confession. I am an idealist at heart, and my professional concerns over the years have been largely confined to my own intellectual development and the experiences in dealing with university businesses. While I have experienced the digital transformation that has come about gradually over the last half century, I have no direct oversight of any developments at my institution, namely the National University of Singapore. So what I'm going to be saying here comes more from having been on opposite ends of the table, participating in policy decisions and executing as a teacher and researcher in the environment that came forth from such decisions and implementations. There will also be some reflections on the effectiveness and potential threats of the changes. Now, digital transformation. To many, this is probably the best thing that has ever happened after fried rice. Now, I'm not playing it down, okay? But I think the question, nevertheless, that is valid in asking is, why do we care? Okay? And I think the digital transformation didn't come yesterday or in the last year. It has been going on continually ever since we invented or discovered semiconductors, actually. All right. Perhaps the pandemic has heightened the usability of the digital technology as a viable vehicle to bring back to our lives or work some resemblance to our own normal. Right? The transformation will not end anytime soon either, but will continue to feature in every aspect of our lives and society. So in that sense, we have no choice but to care. Well, in that case, you know, what can we at the university do as far as trying to address this potential, I don't know whether it's challenge or problem, okay? And to posit my point, I would like to highlight an old saying that may not be true anymore, that the three social institutions that are most resistant to change are the military, the church, and the university, right? Now, in the face of the digital transformation, universities really do not have ready solutions or existing capacities to help the rest of the society to cope with the transformation. Okay? And the reason is very simple. We are smack right in the middle of this transformation. Okay? So yes, universities can possibly be the first responders to figure out ways to cope. But to me, however, the first and foremost step for us to try is to try to keep our own house in shape, I think. Being able to show how we can stand up to the challenge and exploit it to further our mission of higher education will have both direct and indirect impacts. We will serve as examples that the transformation works to our advantage, firstly. Furthermore, while we all recognize that the fact that student experiences are integral parts of their learning at the university and will definitely guide them later in their workplaces and organizations. And our education in this aspect will go beyond the years that the students are with us. And the university does not operate quite in the same way as businesses, government agencies, and other organizations. And instilling the understanding and appreciation of the values and the adaptiveness to different environments go a longer way than any specific tailored training in coping with the continuing digital transformation. We at the universities can do better than anyone else in providing that experience and nurturing that appreciation. I'm sure that there will, some of you in the audience are likely to be able to point out other, complementary roles that the university could play in addressing this transformation. I'll be happy to hear some. So how do we need, what do we need to consider to manage our own house? In digitally transforming the university operations and looking for models that work, we could perhaps learn a thing or two from the other operational leg of the university, namely research. And I'm now telling you the story. The so-called digital transformation has long been developing in research activities globally. When I first joined the NUS in the 1980s, early 80s, we had no email, no internet, and the first PCs were just about coming out. Right? And data input and storage was still through punch cards and magnetic tapes. Research communications were through paper copies, letters, and physical presence at conferences. NUS first had access to BitNet, right? Thanks to the US government agencies, right? We have BitNet in 1987. And it was not until the 90s that we got to play around with the emerging internet and World Wide Web. Now, in particle physics, which I was trained in at the very beginning, in particular, a preprint archive, which is spelled ARXIV, right, a website, with a single PC sitting underneath the desk of physicist Peter Lepage at Cornell University, became a central electronic depository of pre-publication physics research findings. Right? And today, it is the go-to place for the latest news about, in the developments of the field. In those early days of the digital transformation, experimental high-energy physicists had initiated and significantly influenced the development of the internet. Physicists were desperately looking for alternatives to carry out and distributing their research findings and data. Pounds and pounds of digital tape. It's non-trivial to go from one place to another, and it took hours to replicate a magnetic tape during those times. Okay, so in that sense, as a matter of fact, right, internet did not, the seed of internet did not come from Microsoft or Google or any of these. It actually came from CERN, the European Center for Nuclear Research, where the experiments would carry on. Well, the moral of the story is, first of all, the research community felt the need and appreciated the value of the electronic, aka digital means of communication in achieving their research goals. Right. So that's very important. By extension, I would feel that creators of digital technological platforms today will need the buy-in and heed the needs of the users, in our case, the faculty and the students. Right? These users must see the relevance and benefits and internalize the experience so that they can adapt and adopt the vehicle in their work environments and possibly becoming champions for variants of that technology. And one last point, in my view, actually there's a danger that looms over the often zealous pursuit of digital technologies at universities, at least within my own institution. And I'm not referring to the trending ChatGPT here. In Singapore, you might have noticed that patience is never a virtue. When we want something, we want it done yesterday, right? And I think that the pushing effort in the adoption of digital technology very often take on a life of their own. And this is not peculiar to just digital transformation, right? The other thing is the fashionable fad of organizational excellence. And what very often, when the implementation comes, right, the message often is the following: use what I give you, or do as we recommend, with maybe a fainted letter that says, or be penalized. Right? Why? Because the university management endorsed it. Reflection on the purpose of doing all that takes a backseat, and achieving the KPIs of the implementation adoption, which do not necessarily always coincide with our educational objectives, becomes the primary concern, right? My perhaps jaded outlook, but not totally baseless sentiment, is that when you gain something, you also lose something, right? And going from blackboards and books to slides and projectors to online or videotape lectures and smart classrooms, flipped classrooms, blended learning, right? Some compromises were made, okay? And we have only our educational goals to guide us. And constant reflection to me is paramount in our business. Digital technology is a means to an end and not an end by itself. And we must, as a university, stay true to our course. So my idealist take of the challenge of digital transformation is that we at the university will have to accept it. Well, no, let's embrace it with a sense of purpose and constantly reflect on how much closer we are to that purpose and set an example of the value of the use of this digital instrument. Okay, thank you very much for minutes of babbling.
Okay, now we have for all, but let's start a panelist first. Do you want to ask each other questions or comment on what someone has presented? No? Don't be shy. Okay, you want to open to the audience? All right. Anyone? Yes. Not Carmichael? Sure.
By how technologically it's oriented. We need technical managers who know things like philosophy and history. How does that fit into the conversation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Yeah, you put it nearer to your, yeah.
So I was saying that in the discussion, the focus of the university appears to be primarily on technology. But we need technology managers who understand history, anthropology, other cultures, and philosophy. And the new boundaries, I think, are wide open, and the university is not responding. I'm going to say something about my own education. I studied physics at Caltech. And what's striking is the way physics was taught was, here are the differential equations, put in the numbers and calculate the results. We were never told why the phenomena like magnetism was interesting. It was left out. Nothing about optics in terms of the history of art or the physiology of seeing. It was just the plumbing of putting the numbers in. I was fortunate to have Feynman as a teacher, who always put things in historical and perspective and political, poetic form. But he was the only one who did that. He'd say, well, as Dirac said, nobody knew who Dirac was because they never talked about it. So anyway, I'm thinking, how do we, in the future, have universities that are much more broad-based in their education roles?
Yeah, you were talking about even in Caltech, and he mentioned a name called Richard Feynman. He was a great teacher of physics, from what I know, and he was very unusual because from little I know about him, he was very lively as a teacher, right? And he was also a musician. He likes to play music, and but how do you move away, especially if you are a student of engineering, science and engineering, that you are not confined to just, numerical manipulation, yeah, but you want to go beyond that. You want to go not only just to understand the theory, but to understand how it fit in the whole universe of things, right? So that I think is often lacking in universities. So maybe I want to address this to the chairman of the University of Technology. How are you going to address that issue?
This is the problem of proximity. I think your reflexivity I kena, man. Tan Sri Ko, I should have known better. I'm not quite sure how to relate that, but I was struck and taken by the various comments about, especially from a field which I know very little about, which is physics and so on. But I think physicists, I think they ponder and reflect about, all this science in space, in natural world, which is very deep. And ultimately, there's also a link throughout from the creation of time, right? From the time immemorial. And if all this cleverness around intelligence, around AI and whatever else fail to answer the question of meaning, then what's all this about, right? Literally. So I find that very reassuring, hearing from scientists, and perhaps I'm told, I'm not a scientist, this is one of the most fundamental science field, right, which is physics. Of course, that's biology and chemistry. My field is more finance, and really I grew up in finance, accounting. In fact, I didn't even go to university because I did chartered accountancy. But along the way, I think I became a bit of a trespasser because this one doesn't quite click. So the curiosity part, then I did. So my academic journey was a little bit funny. So from there, I decided to study Islamic studies at the graduate diploma level at the first university I went to, UIA. And then as a financial person, I did my CFA and whatever else. And then the Asian crisis all blew up. I worked for a firm, Solomon, that was a financial advisor in Malaysia. Then I decided there's more to life than finance. So thankfully, I landed up in Cambridge, who accepted me with technically no degree, actually. to answer what is beyond finance. Development was defined as politics and sociology. And then when I asked my professors and what about religion, they said, oh, no, we're Cambridge, we don't do religion. But I spent the summer actually reading about Islamic finance and then linking it all together. And then later came back with working with Hajun, trying to answer about what makes, how to build better countries, right? Not just better companies and better finance. The point is about trespassing. Along the way, I trespassed, I found, a Princeton man, right? Albert Hirschman, who I think was a contemporary of Einstein, who was a trespasser. In fact, he wrote his notion of essays in trespassing, that to solve complex problems, you basically got to have multidisciplines. I note from Sasha that I'm learning also. So universities, you say, yeah, which is true. Like, you got all these great individuals who basically sounds like they don't like to trespass beyond their field too much, but I'm sure there are exceptions. So to me, the problems of the world are indeed kind of global problems, climate change, inequality, everything. So the global commons cannot be solved by silos. They got to be solved by Nila. So Jonathan, for example, I was invited once to speak at the Junior Pyramid. There's a pyramid club somewhere behind Orchard Street there. So when they invited me there, I said, oh, what the hell is this pyramid club? So I was being very proper, which is true. I said, hey, you guys have done well, because they wanted to maybe hear about Iskandar, right? Iskandar, we were just starting the special economic zone. I said, I think there are complementary advantages between our two countries, because you guys have done well. We've done not bad, but imagine if we were both bought the same, then we'll be more competitor in that sense, right? I think there's complementarities. Then they said, why are you so polite? I said, I'm polite. I'm naturally polite. But I said, you done well. Then when they asked, surely we can do more. I said, I don't know, the thing that came off my head, I hope it came out not as rude. But I honestly felt your next stage is to figure out how to be from a success as a city-state to be more civilizational. There's nothing to do. I mean, another AI, Anwar Ibrahim is talking about is about this civilizational nation and all that. But I honestly think that. So I think your solutions for, at that level, just now, we had this thing about, you said must hire the best, remember? ETH can talk like that, but what about, this and that? But can you are in a region, which I'm sure you're doing already, some of those projects that you need to apply, maybe I'm sure you're already doing in Indonesia and Philippines, in what they call it, in Malaysia and other places, Sabah, Sarawak, right? Which I think, so the idea of a commons that we can apply together, is something that really interests me, right? So that all this clever stuff, we don't lose the ultimate meaning. You got to go and help people ultimately. And it's not just your people or our people, it's about actually the other, the ones who really need it. So that would be my kind of response, Tan Sri Andrew. Sorry, Tan Sri Ko.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot, because you are the only non-scientist here, except for me. I decided earlier on in life that there was more life than physics. Then later on, I now found that there's more life than politics. So anyway, yes. No. Rafiq actually asked, then I'll come to you. Okay, right? I'm done. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that the kind of observation that you've made, actually, the wisdom came with age, with experience as well. And that's, of course, it's ideal, but at the same time, we're dealing with a bunch of 20, 21-year-olds who don't believe in delayed gratification. And there might be some kind of resistance as well. But plus, the academics who are involved will also have to evolve to gain that wisdom or insights. So from a university point of view, at least in USM, what we realize is, we know that knowledge has been compartmentalized so much that we have 62 programs and 62 different qualities as well. So what we did was, we've introduced a beginning school, in the sense that before they enter any of the 62 programs, we aspire to have all 4,000 new intakes to go through this 3 weeks of preparatory school, where we teach them, one, grit and philosophy, to all, engineering, non-engineers, social scientists. We teach them grid and philosophy. We teach them financial literacy. We teach them all of climate change and SDGs. We teach them computational and design thinking. So you think like a computer scientist as well as an architect. And we teach them genomics and gerontology to understand who you are. And of course, the science of old age, to develop compassion among our students. We also teach them metaverse and AI. And we also teach them poverty, things like Gini index and all those things, with the hope that this forms some form of direction when they actually go through their 4 years in university, to say that there's a whole of life out there, and perhaps they can gain those wisdom as they go through the system. It seems to work. We now have students from engineering who develop passion to help the age through technology. And that's what we wanted them to do, and develop some kind of philosophy with regards to being a global citizen and actually looking at the issues of the nation. So yeah, I mean, we made some headway there, but I think again has to do with age as well. If you mature and you gain the wisdom as well. So if we overdo it, then the students will push back, and it's not going to be sustainable, and they don't like it. So.
Yeah, thank you, Rafiq. I think that sounds very interesting. Is more enriching than what is the basic courses required for private university imposed by MQA. That you have to study very dry, things about the society, about the constitution, and all that. But I think something like that would be much more enriching to a student, so that you can open up and be able to place themselves in the society. So before I go to Hamdan, maybe Professor.
Just very quickly, I think addressing Doug's question as
a physicist.
Sukun, not quite. As an educational sort of participant, right? As TK has mentioned, I was involved in the very founding years of the Yale NUS College, which is probably the first truly liberal arts college in Southeast Asia. Okay, and I think that there are a number of challenges that we face in this part of the world, right? Not the least of which is a matter of finance. The amount of money required to actually graduate a student in general education as befitting a liberal arts college is huge. Yale NUS College at the beginning had a student ratio of 1 to 10, even better ratio than our medical school, right, in the university, right? And we had, but there was a certain sense of idealism in trying to address this thing. We wanted to establish that college with the proviso that we are not saying that this is the form of education that should be implemented throughout Singapore. We cannot afford to do that to begin with, right? Secondly, we were limiting our enrollment. 250 students per year with a total eventual enrollment of 1,000. That's the number. And for just as a scale, we typically have about 20,000 students getting into the universities every year, so to speak. So that's the kind of scale that we had. But our idealism at that point in time is that we're going to include very many elements of Asian civilization. In other words, the typical liberal arts education as defined by the US institutions is always Western civilization. You read Homer, you read Iliad, Odyssey and things like that. Our curriculum at Yale and US actually included Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Tao Te Ching, Lun Yu, and Shi Ji, in addition to the standard typical texts that we read. And students, it's quite of reflecting my own experience that students did not have to declare a major until almost the third year or the fourth year. Right? My own experience at Chicago, which is not truly a true, blood liberal arts college, we need at that time 42 courses to graduate. My physics graduation requirement, major requirement is only 12 out of that 42. So, in that sense, I think the basically the key point is that the evolution of higher education in this part of the world had always been sort of under the flag of manpower training, right? Sort of upper market vocational training. Now, of course, the sociologists, politicians will not agree with me on this. I did read Max Weber's Politics as Vocation and Science as Vocation. Right? But the difference is that Marx actually wrote his papers in German. So the vocation is actually a translation. Right? So it is, I think that the wish is there. We wish our students could be truly educated, in the true sense of the word. But unfortunately, in Malaysia and Singapore, including Singapore, I don't think that we can truly afford it. I think that even with the current, promotion of multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary courses, we still could not run away totally from the manpower training kind of umbrella. Right? I mean, Singapore did not say it, but actually every year we get a spreadsheet of numbers. We need 233 civil engineers. 233, not 235, not 230, but number is given, exactly given. Right? So in that sense, we are doing what we can, under the pretext.
I'm done.
I think the title says role of the university in digital transformation. And reflecting on the conversation, obviously, universities, the aspiration of universities remains to be that fountain of knowledge, place of curiosity, and probably also to shape human progress and human development. But the reality is that we end up serving the market. And, we talked about numbers, and eventually it's all about, your role becomes purely the case of what you're going to measure, how well your graduates got accepted, not about how much they're going to contribute to human progress or human development and such. And this seems to be a kind of continued flaw that stemmed from the Industrial Revolution and continues to be the path that we all seem to be charting. Even though, we kind of accept the fact that this unequal world that will soon see climate destroyers and so on, we continue to keep sailing on the same path. So my reflections to say that, whether it's digital or non-digital, the question becomes, do universities go back to this core role of building that human progress, building a more holistic human being that is equipped to deal with the vagaries of the world that's out there, as opposed to producing quote-unquote workers that serve the needs of the industry. So this seems to be that contestation that we kind of fluctuate and so on. And over time, I keep dealing with this. I think there's constant mention about lack of talent in the case of Penang. Sometimes you ask this question, is that our industry is just wanting robots that are ready to fit, as opposed to actually developing and building people up. The equal responsibility it requires outside the university sometimes is not reflected on. That's the second thing I just want to raise was more in terms of what you mentioned on the liberal arts and the Asian tradition. There's so much that has existed in the what I would call the traditional knowledge systems, be it whether it's Chinese, Indian, Arabic, or whatever not. But much of this today is set aside, and probably set aside to the extent where much wisdom exists in unearthing them. Is there a role for traditional knowledge systems in the digital age?
Okay, thanks. Ask Shasha to answer because he wanted to answer to you immediately.
So when I was listening to you, I thought, what do the parents do with their kids? The university cannot kind of clean up what the society has forgotten to do all the way until they get there. I think we should put everything into the basket of the universities. I understand what you say. We can go back, so at least I know the Western culture. We could go back to the Greeks, you know, Socrates and Plato. Their main question is, what does it take to make a good human? That is all their philosophy, nothing else. That was the question. So they couldn't answer. They tried to answer it, but they went all over the place. I think we need in the university really to take the time also to educate a little bit more responsible citizens. There, I'm totally with you. This is one of the tasks, but we cannot. What you have asked is actually the mess we have out in the world. Why is the mess still there and getting bigger? So we have all these fine universities. What are these guys doing? I think in a university, contrary what you said, and what I lived also, exactly what you said, is they are now more comprehensive. And I would say no student coming out of the university denies global change. Maybe too much none, but 99 know about it. But then they go out in a society which functions totally different. And it is what's a kind of, we need drop by drop to make the hole in the stone. And it's not done in one thing, but we as parents have also a task, and I think an even bigger task than what the university can do in educating ethical individuals.
Yes, don't load everything on the university, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, no. All right, we have many hands. Hold on, I have 4 hands amongst the audience. Yeah, Rafiq, can I come back to you later? Yeah. Dr. Shu? Yes. But for the purpose of recording, we need it. Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to charge the panel with the duty that not to, how should I say, undershoot the time. I know that we are trying to train people for industry, but you know, it's almost like medicine. Good medical schools teach medicine and teach bedside manners. And the not so good ones will teach medicine. Right? So my challenge to you all is obvious. Lily, you were referring to the fact that your departments are rather siloed. One way to change that is to make sure that they are not siloed, so that your science or the technical students will have to face the challenge that you are going to make them think philosophy and the arts. That's all, really, because after all, the best universities can do it, and don't tell me that your students are any less.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Shu. Can you pass the mic to your neighbor over there, please? Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So actually, I have 2 questions.
Louder, please. Speak out.
Yes, I have 2 questions. One is that I went to university, but I dropped out because I felt that it was making me dependent on jobs rather than empowering me to follow my right calling. So how do we empower students to follow their own calling? And second, how do we make them resilient so that even in the face of crisis like pandemic, they don't lose their mental health? And my second question is that the biggest challenge that we face as a society today is climate change. So are the courses that we are traditionally offering fit for the purpose? Do we need to reinvent the courses like architecture or tourism or business administration to be really fit for the purpose?
Okay, thank you. So our Dr. Sharon, yes, over there.
I hear references to humanity and ethics. My question is, how do you translate that into reality in the classroom? What's being done in universities so that those who graduate from technology are also conscious of ethics and morality. We hear of medical ethics, we hear of legal ethics. Do we have a technological ethics?
Good question. Now, Jin Kong, Mr. Tan Jin Kong, yeah. He's from the industry.
Good afternoon,
He's
distinguished
from,
panelists.
Yeah.
My name is C.K. Tan. I'm the vice president of a Penang-based company called NationGate.
Just got listed and
It's
very
a
well.
local electronic manufacturing service. Now, today, I actually, just now, all the panelists are really well expressed in their academic point of view regarding today's topics, but I try to share a little bit on the industry point of view in the topics of this forum. Today's topic is called the role of university in digital transformation. Actually, there are two elements over here. One is the role of university. The other element is the digital transformation. So now I try to share a little bit on the relevancy between these two elements. Yeah, first thing I like to share more on the digital transformation. The digital transformation, actually, it is more or again, we all live in a different world. Okay, especially at our age. In the past, the word is called universe, but today we call the word metaverse. That's a new word. So many people may not understand what is metaverse. Actually, as I said, in the past, we live in the physical world. Whatever we learn, whatever we come out, whatever we dealt with, actually deal with a physical world. But today, it's a meta world. Actually, we deal more with the virtual world, the cyberspace, than the real world. What does that mean? That means whatever the way we live, whatever the way we act, and whatever the way we do things is totally different from 30 years back, 40 years back, 10 years back, 5 years back. Not to mention, today, there's a lot of emphasis put on this so-called artificial intelligence. Okay, and more, the human intelligence will be replaced with the advancement of the artificial intelligence. Just now, I really like what Chancellor Azman had mentioned. Yes, artificial intelligence will keep advancing, but the artificial wisdom will not. Wisdom is totally a different thing at all. Wisdom is a deployment of all the intelligence to make sense of what you need to do. Okay, so now, since we are living in this world, and this world will continue to go more digitized. Now, another thing I want to talk about, university. What is university? University actually is an incubator for all the talent pool. Meaning, at any one time, we need to prepare whoever still in the university, who will be our future talent, to be equipped and to be mind conditioned. When the moment they come out from the ivory tower, they can adapt to the real world, the contemporary world they are. So meaning, university actually do not really, okay, of course, you can argue that you should spend time on the research, do whatever innovation, no dispute. But the core objective or the core competence for university is to develop the person who can come out the time the world, which is the metaverse, is operating. Meaning they need to learn a lot of the new tool, and if not, they will be obsoleted. As you all know, the curriculum, when they develop, they take time. By the time they approve, they take time. By the time they come out, and in the real world, this world is moving and in no time. So there's always a gap. There's always a gap. And there's an inherent problem. People say a mismatch of a graduate to match with future ready or the industry ready. I tell you, it's an inherent problem that cannot be solved because of the nature of that kind of a space. You know very well. So back to this, university is an incubator of all the talent. Now, if I tie into the digital transformation, whereby this world is go crazy in the virtual world with the digital world. So how are we going to prepare all these students with that kind of a competence? Have to start from the strategic leadership. Today, let me tell what, technology or digital evolution or whatsoever, it is, you no need to worry. It will go by itself. It's a natural evolvement. It will natural. You no need to have anybody to manipulate it. But the point here is we have all the young people. They are still in the university, meaning they are still not in the industry. They are something like a rabbit in the zoo compared to a rabbit in the jungle. It's totally different mindset, even though biologically they are both rabbit. So back to this topic, the role of university actually is to prepare these people how to make use of all these tools, which is so advanced, which already replace a lot of traditional training. Just like just now you talk about the Chat GPT. Do you really need to go through the same curriculum in the past 5 years or 10 years? No need. But just now, our professor mentioned, how are you going to train them to make the intelligent, to make the whatever be prepared to be even go further. That is beyond what they can do. Okay, so I would say, it is a comment, actually not a question. I would say have to start with the strategic leadership. Now, on the national wise, I think we Malaysia, our government have put in a lot of effort to put in a lot of emphasis and strategic leadership promoting this digital. I think that's given, it's a blessing. In the university, I believe people like all of you here or the Vice Chancellor are really very put emphasis on that. But how about the second level? How about the competency of all the second level? With due respect, I'm not saying that they're not digitally literate, but again, they may not really put emphasis on, they still have their own KPIs, as what just now mentioned. So in order to make sense of this so-called the role of university and the digital transformation, my humble opinion start with the way how started from the leaders, which is the Vice Chancellor, and proliferate all these things to the second level and make importance to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, next, Anwar, Dr. Sri Anwar Faisal. Yeah, the mic is coming to you. Yeah.
Mine is just a comment. I think in the thinking of the role of the university in digital transformation, I like them to spend, being an institution that should be critical, a lot of time also on looking at the critical dimensions of digital transformation. And these are all, this is the underside, the dark side of digital transformation. I like to talk about surveillance and the way in which human beings are now being controlled through that in their marketing life, in their political life, in their private lives. We're talking about power in the world in terms of who runs institutions and so on, in using digital idea in influencing our minds in terms of politics. What happens to actually the e-waste, amazing e-waste transformation that is happening in terms of just rubbish that is going out and now taking over the world in terms of the new kind of rubbish that is there, and the whole ecological waste that is also occurring. And I think issues like these should also become a very, very important part of the role of the university in this area. And for those of us who are rebels, I'm spending quite a lot of time on trying to expose this dark side also, so that we begin to be aware, much more aware, to be human, to be humanistic, about having conscience about how we are moving in this direction, because it is a technology that is moving. We have the heart and our hands to make sure that the world just not dominated by this dark force.
Yeah,
Thank
well
you.
put. Yeah. In fact, this is the ESG side, which is extremely important. Yeah. All right. Now, anyone else want to comment from the audience? Yeah. Okay. Any concluding remark? Can I ask if you want to have, yeah, one round? It's the other way. We start from left to right now. Okay, Choy Heng. two sentences of wisdom. Not AW, HW, human wisdom. Not yeah.
You're looking at a bot, so there's no wisdom.
No wisdom.
No, I think the comment on looking for the dark side of some of these developments obviously is important. Of course, that's going to lead to another debate as to whether technologies intrinsically can be good or bad, dark or bright, so to speak. I think very often it is the human decision on how to use it and exploit it that could possibly, lead to some negative implications. Using ChatGPT as a cheating tool, obviously, it's not intended so to be. Right? In fact, I was thinking just now and say, if we were to set a very peculiar exam question to ChatGPT, chances are that essay is going to be killed by our anti-plagiarism software because it's going to be marking so many similarities.
Okay, thank you. Two very long sentences. Now, Rafiq, yes.
Thank you so much. I always tell my staff that we do not compromise our values, but we are pragmatic with external evaluations. I also tell my staff that things are not always black and white. Like Anand mentioned this now, sometimes it's a bit in the middle. So you can produce engineers who also display good values as well. So, it's two sides of the same coin. They're not mutually exclusive. And the third is, I think with regards to the question on humanity and also your question just now, as an institution, we have to walk the talk first. We have to display that we are aware of climate change. We do things to cut that, and again, put ourselves through lots of tests of humanity and philosophy and ethics when we decide on things, when we carry ourselves. I think if we do that, then students will gravitate towards that. So thank you.
Thank you. It's just quick.
The role of the university is to educate the future leader. And the leader is not the pure technician. It is a human being in the society which takes leadership. And the university has to do that, absolutely. And here you can not tell each professor to do it. This has to be the philosophy of the leaders of the university. Only the leaders of the university can actually put that finger on the education of the entire university. So it's for all of us. I'm almost gone now in this leadership, but I think the leaders have to take that so they are actually forming leaders of the university. Build their education.
Thank you. Thank you. Azman, your turn.
Yeah, I wanted to take my last word for myself, I guess, is to reflect briefly about the issue of mental health, actually, which hasn't quite come out in our discussion, because I know I still have one daughter left in university. She's okay. In fact, she's a student counselor for other students at Columbia. And I'm shocked, to be honest. I'm trying to understand. These are very, very smart kids, but they're so stressed out. And it seems that, these are elite universities. They got all these digital tools. So why is it they are, it's peer pressure, it's never enough, which I guess is a mirror of society. And this is supposed to be there. Again, many of you are much more known in the field of educating. So this, I'd just like to put out there, because it is truly, I believe, in epidemic proportion, the issue of mental health. Bristol Uni actually met the BC. Apparently, it has the highest suicide rate. Partly is a bridge over there, easier, I think. No, serious point. It is actually a serious point. People jump, kids jump. Well, the bridge is not a problem, but it's something else, right? But anyway, New York has got this wonderful thing that the architect did. They had to shut it down. People were jumping off. So I guess if we would really talk about better human beings, solve society, better human capital, I think the crucibles are the universities. And in that regard, I like the thing that you dropped out and trying to find the calling. I think there's a deeper search going on, which and to be fair, not just universities can solve that. Clearly, everybody has a role. And personally, as I say, I'm very much a practitioner. I think I learn most from doing, and from role models actually. So to the extent that the university has got all these role models who look at all these things, who solve problems, go out, and the administrators and the leadership of the university should put, compulsory components that you got to go out, do CSR project, this kind of stuff, right? So I think maybe that's part of it. Thank you.
Okay, Lily.
I'm of the opinion university cannot do all the things that we want the university to do. And obviously family, parents has to play a role. But I'm also mindful because I'm quite focused. In this particular university, the majority of our students who come cannot afford it. They come because they want a second chance, third chance in life. They never got a degree, never had a chance for whatever reason, and they're now coming back. And our faculty and the university and everyone in the university, I tell them, you always have to be conscious of this fact. We have to give them an education. We have to be able to get them through what is required by the policy regulations of Malaysia so that they finally get a degree. And with that degree, they can get on with life. And I think I'm very focused, very conscious with my team. We have to provide what we can do best to make sure they get through it. So that's my concluding remark.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, clap for. Finally, I think I want to ask a 30-something to make a comment. There's none other than Jonathan because he put up his hand. Because the rest of us, well, Rafiq, you are the youngest in the firing line. He's below 50. One of the, I think you are easily the youngest vice chancellor ever. Yeah, second or third youngest in history of Malaysia, but he's still over 40. So you're under 40. So you have a say. All right, you can have the last word. Yes, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you. No, I wanted to make some comments in response to many of the remarks that were going around the room. Because I wear two hats, right? I wear the hat of a philosopher. I wear the hat of an educator, right? And we hear the word ethics and wisdom and humanity being thrown around quite a lot in the past, just now, right? So, two observations about digital transformation, and this is coming from me as an educator. I see around 1,000 students every year, right? And many of them in NUS are also from Malaysia. So what I see, I think we can extrapolate and say it applies here, right? We talk about mental health. Why are so many of our students, okay, maybe I stand because why are so many of our students actually having so much anxiety and mental health problems? A lot of it actually has to do with social media, digital transformation, and we're not paying enough attention to it. Because I speak to my students and I ask, when I was a student, we just say, I stress. Now, they use language of fear. They don't say I stress. They say, I'm afraid, I'm anxious, I'm worried, I'm scared. This is the language of our undergraduates now. And I've been trying to find out why. And what I've come to realize is they've been growing up in an age of social media. Since whenever they can remember, it has always been social media. But one thing that our young people don't understand is that when we post on social media, we post what? Our idealized versions of ourselves, right? Before, when we were students, if I want to see how my peers are doing, I'll just check in on you, right? Oh, okay, you're like that, right? Now, we rely on social media as if it's going to inform us, and everyone's just posting their idealized versions of themselves. So imagine, right? I'm a student here. I go on Instagram, everyone's here. That's why the stress is incredibly high. Like every time I talk to one of my students, they join LinkedIn, right? And then they see, oh, my peers have 5 internships. They are in 2 exco committees. They have 10 online course certificates. They panic. And I have students writing to me. They say, Mr. Sim, I'm so tired. I just want to rest, but everyone is doing everything, So now, linked to digital transformation, right? We say that social media is impacting mental health, but look at what's going on in our public discourse. We are framing this as a technological problem. We're saying, oh, this is the problem of Instagram. The developer should do something about it. We every time a computer is involved, we keep framing it as a technological problem. We don't realize that nowadays, the online and offline world are overlapping. So we need to stop talking about it as a computer problem and more as a culture problem, right? And now with AI and with robotics, in the field of philosophy, right, we are starting to realize that a lot of philosophical, ethical questions are fast becoming engineering questions. Engineering questions, right? Like if the car, automated car, so you're just driving down, suddenly a pedestrian just jumps out, right? Should the car prioritize saving the driver or saving the pedestrian? That's an engineering question already. So many, and because we frame all these technological problems as computer problems, as tech problems, we are relying on the developers to make ethical decisions for us. And many of them are not trained. How many people are doing philosophy, right? Yeah. Now, and what's the irony? We keep talking about, yes, wisdom, philosophy, very important. But then every time, like, I know this because I grew up studying philosophy, and people say, why you study philosophy? Can get a job, man? Can eat, man? Right? So we recognize the value of philosophy, of ethics, but we discourage our young people from pursuing it. Every time. I always have students say, I want to learn, but my parents say it's useless. You cannot get a job. So you notice there is this contradiction, right? We say we value humanity, and yet we discourage our children because we say you cannot get a job. So I think we need to really, ask ourselves, what do we really value? Yeah, here we keep saying humanity. Then if we say that is the case, then we should encourage our young people to pursue ethics, philosophy. Yeah. So this is me coming from the position of a 30-plus-year-old, working with I think I've taught about 7,000 students already. Yeah, 7 years, so 7,000 students, right? And this is what I've observed, and we are seeing all this as part of the digital transformation, and we cannot see them as separate things. They're all interconnected, one with the other. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we end the session with more questions than answers. but nonetheless, I think we are enriched by many of the perspectives. And thank you for bringing up this issue about the mental health, and in a way echoed by Jonathan. It's a serious problem. I think it's increasingly very serious. And so are we becoming less human as we become more technologically, inclined? Yeah. You must follow his example. Now, 80-something still walking very straight. Yeah, okay, another 30-something, 20-something. Yeah, come. Yeah. Right. Yes, I recently at age 70 plus only learned about a new term called agronomics. How to sit properly. Ergonomics. You see, can't even pronounce right. See, how far behind have we become? Yeah. No, not ego. Okay, so I think we call the session to an end. All right. Thank you very much, all of you. Very good discussion.